Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Dynasty SZN. I'm your host, Patrick. Austin's back with us today, and we're going to go over some mock drafts. We've got two mock drafts we're going to look at. The first is only offense. The second one has IDP in there, but these are startup Dynasty drafts, startup Dynasty Superflex drafts. One of them has IDP. So we'll talk about where you want to start taking IDP players and what the real overall value is, and what positions you're focusing and where to take them in your startup drafts if it's something you've never done before. And before we get into that, let's talk about some news. The biggest news, obviously, is Tyreek Hill. Yeah, that one.
My bad.
Yeah, Trevor Siemian to Chicago. That did happen.
I thought that was the biggest news. I didn't know anything bigger happened.
Yeah, me either. No, Tyreek Hill to Miami. And as a Jets fan, I know you guys had false hope there for a moment, but
we were probably never actually, and that's just fake news. I won't believe it. I'll just ignore it, block it out.
The last
we
thing I was reading,
we didn't have the offer in first and accept it first, only for the Dolphins to come in and snag him.
Oh, you mean you're trading Tyreek Hill?
Go to that team.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened. The report is that the Jets had an accepted trade first, and they were working out like a contract extension with Tyreek Hill, which we saw Devontae Adams do, same sort of thing, go get paid, get traded. He had a no-trade clause, so he had to waive it, and he got to choose, and he chose Miami after they came in while he was negotiating a contract with the Jets. Miami came in and put in an acceptable offer with the Chiefs and offered him more money. So he's getting, I think it works out after the extension to like $30 million a year, so it's pretty crazy. He's definitely a lot of money.
Did you see how the contract though worked out to where it's $30 million a year when you average it, but that final year is 1 year $45 million just to drag up the average? There's no way he gets paid that for that last year. That's a restructure or a cut at that point.
Yeah.
So the whole $30 million a year to be the highest paid might be a little fake.
Well, that's how they determine it. You know, any metric they use, he's going to be at the top now. So it's still a ton of money. I think the official extension was, let me pull it up here. The official extension was 3 years, $75 million on what he currently had. So he's under contract through 2025, and it averages out to like $23.8 million a year. But his new money is much more than that. And like you said, that last year, I doubt he's going to get paid $45 million. He's probably not going to be on that roster at that point, or he's going to sign some other sort of extension and not get that $45 million 1 year hit. But while we're talking about cap hits, I saw an interesting stat today of Matt Ryan's cap hit and Julio Jones's cap hit last year. And it's like, they have 60-something million at dead cap. It's crazy how some of these contracts work, and who knows what Tyreek Hill is going to be when they have to pay Jalen Waddle as well. So when that time is going to come, and they're going to have to do something. So you look at how long the contract is, and it's probably that long because they know they're going to have to pay Jalen Waddle at the end of that. So it lines up perfectly with what you'd expect, and I think that those two both take dynasty hits in their value because, you know, we had in this mock draft that we're going to look at that we did today, Tyreek Hill and then Jalen Waddle went back to back as wide receivers. It is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th and 7th wide receiver off the board in this mock draft we did today, and I don't think we're going to see that as much. I don't think Jalen Waddle is going to be as high. Jalen Waddle's probably going to drop down to that like 12 to 15 range for most people, which is kind of where I had him already, but I moved him down a couple spots just because of the impact of Tyreek Hill coming into that offense. But Tyreek Hill, I don't know what to expect. I just don't expect the passing volume that we saw in Kansas City. I don't know, obviously if they use Tyreek Hill like Deebo Samuel and it's Mike McDaniel, he's going to be great. And I still think Tyreek Hill is going to be great. But Jalen Waddle just, we saw Kelsey and Hill both put up great numbers, and there wasn't really a third behind them that was ever really consistent. Well, this kind of kills Cedric Wilson. Devontae Parker is very hurt in value in this. Like, it's it's going to be interesting to see how well they actually do at the end of the year, and if Tua does become that passer. I think it's the only person this helps is Tua, right? What do you think?
Yeah, it really feels like it kind of hurts everybody across the board other than Tua. I mean, if you had really high hopes for the like we have our Mecole or Juju talks for the guys that are left over there. Those guys I guess get a little bit of a bump, but I remember telling you I was like, I don't even know if this is good for Juju because if he ends up being the number one, we know he struggles as the number one. He's better off as the number two. And
Yeah,
then Travis Kelsey, he doesn't need more pressure on him. He doesn't need more focus. He gets enough targets as it is. This isn't driving his targets up anymore. Mahomes is for sure down. Jalen Waddle's down. I mean, maybe the whoever ends up being their starting running back, if it's the pretty heavily Edmonds over there at the Dolphins, then he might be more beneficial to a team that gets it down the field. So they get closer to the end zone, more chances to punch it into the end zone. But it really hurts way more people than it helps, and the people it helps is so
yeah.
little. Like Tua, yeah, he'll be a little better, but I think that's really the only person you can definitively say this guy is getting a boost out of this.
Yeah, and overall, I'm not like as I have Patrick Mahomes in our league, and I'm not super worried. Like you don't worry about Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, it sucks that he lost Tyreek Hill, but Mahomes, all this really did for me. Like I had Mahomes still number one over Josh Allen, which a lot of people already had Josh Allen number one. He finished first the last 2 seasons at quarterback. So like Josh Allen being number one, he probably already could have been there. But this did have me move Mahomes to 2, and that was really all I did. And I'm still not worried about him. I'm still excited to have Mahomes. He's still there for $1 billion. He's going to be there forever. He still has Andy Reid, and there was a stat of like Tyreek Hill missed 4 games, and Patrick Mahomes was 3-1 through like no interceptions and like 8 touchdowns in 4 games or something. Which 8 touchdowns in 4 games, that is down. Like that's 2 a game. You want Patrick Mahomes to be that guy who can score you 4 touchdowns every week. But I still am not real worried. They did bring in MVS, who is a field stretcher. They wanted speed. They still have Mecole Hardman for speed, but they don't really use him over the top. So I think there are so many targets available in that offense with Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle leaving that even though Robinson and Pringle weren't somebody that you could put into your lineup every week just because of Travis Kelsey and Tyreek Hill being the ones there, that third option, even if it was somebody that we could rely on to be in there every week with them rotating it out all the time, it was really hard to know, who could you put in your lineup. Now, right now, I think the theoretical value of Mecole Hardman and Juju is more than you could get for them, like what you hope they could turn into, because there's like 300 plus targets available there. They have the most targets. They are tied with the Cowboys with 19 receiving touchdowns, no longer in the building. So that's a lot of scoring opportunities that could go to a Mecole, a Juju, even CEH. I think CEH actually wins from this. I think CEH being able to get more involved in the passing game. We saw Darrell Williams catch a lot of balls last year while CEH was out. If CEH gets that role, CEH could be what we've wanted him to be this whole time. But at this point, everybody's so out on CEH, we don't believe it. We don't know if it's going to happen. Like, I may be trying to, if I can get him for super cheap, go test the waters. But like, people have to be really out on CEH for you to get him for what you would really want to pay for him right now. He's still going to be too expensive just because of the offense, the touchdowns, and the hype that was around him when he came in. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them draft a running back as well in the later round, second or third round. That's a possibility. They use Darrell Williams a lot. They liked Darrell Williams. Obviously,
yeah, if they draft a running back, I want that running back.
Me too, and because I don't want to say they don't trust CEH, but CEH has had some injuries. He's missed some time. He has been stuffed at the goal line numerous times. It's just like, I don't know how much faith they have in him. So they have the space for a second running back to come in there. Remember, we saw Jerick McKinnon in the playoffs. He's not there. Darrell Williams isn't there. And those were the most productive running backs on that team last year. So I think they may get a bump in pass catching. CEH might, if they bring somebody in, I might be interested, especially if they bring in a really good pass catcher, which I know is weird to say because that's what CEH is good at. Like, we want him to do it. They just don't. I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the draft at wide receiver too, because they got 5 picks for Tyreek Hill. So they send Tyreek Hill out of town, and they got a first-round pick, a second-round pick this year, a fourth-round pick this year, and they got a 4th and a 6th-round pick next year. So we're talking about a non-quarterback who just got traded for 5 picks. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, that is a package.
Yeah, that is so much. And, it's funny to see the ripple effects, the butterfly effect from the Laramie Tunsil trade, like all those picks that they've turned into now Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Javon Holland, and somebody else I can't remember, but like Igbenogany, like one of the corners they drafted, they went out and turned those picks that they got for Laramie Tunsil into a lot of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Chiefs now do to turn those picks into stuff. I can say right now, if the Chiefs draft a wide receiver in the first round, you want him on your team, right?
Oh, absolutely. I don't see how they don't draft a wide receiver in the first round right now.
Yeah, I agree. They have to. Like, them and the Packers, right? We've heard rumors of both of them interested in DK and Tyler Lockett, but it doesn't sound like anything's really moving there.
Surprisingly, not much talk about a guy that I've been talking about, but I haven't heard really anybody else when Will Fuller.
Yeah.
Don't know what happened to him. He came in, is supposed to be maybe missing 1 game over in Miami, then misses the entire season, and now what happened to him?
Yeah,
I
he had
thought he
that
would be a
broken finger.
great fit over there at KC, but then MVS I feel like is pretty much the same type of player, so I don't know if they're going to still try and get a guy like Will Fuller at this point. I feel like after MVS they might
Yeah.
just get one more in the draft, and maybe one in the first, one in the second. Who knows if they go for multiple, but at least one wide receiver to call it good. But maybe Will Fuller to the Packers. Maybe we get my OBJ Landry reunion at the Packers. But I don't know what's happening with these last couple guys. I don't know if teams are like, these guys, I'll just wait until we see if we get someone in the draft, and if we don't, then we'll reach out to them. I don't know
Yeah.
what the plan is here, but
There's a couple guys that me and you have talked about that are like end of the first round wide receiver targets, like Jahan Dotson and Christian Watson and like George Pickens in the beginning of the second possibly, and things like that. That all of those guys, if any of them, because we could see all of the big names go before that, like the Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave. We could see all of those guys gone by the time we get into the 20s. And the Packers are at 22, and then the Chiefs are back-to-back later, and Packers have another pick later. So we could see some of those early second-round receivers get pushed up into the back of the first round. If we get a bunch of quarterbacks that get pushed up, we could see some very good wide receivers fall to the Packers and the Chiefs. And if that happens, if you get one of those like top 5 wide receiver prospects in this draft that are all really good, but they're not Devonta Smith, they're not Jamar Chase, they're not Jalen Waddle, they're like right after that. And so any of those guys, if you can get them in there and get them in a high-powered offense that has a ton of targets available, like that could be very, very productive as a rookie. And MVS, I think, is the best case scenario if you were hoping for Juju or Mecole Hardman to become anything, because MVS, while he's going to add that speed and that outside, that field stretching ability, like MVS isn't or hasn't been a like target hog. He is used specifically for that speed and the deep threat. And I think that can open up things for like Mecole Hardman and Juju and Travis Kelce, where we saw Tyreek working all over the field. And I think that's more of the, like those intermediate and short routes are going to turn into Juju, Mecole Hardman, while MVS is still working over the top. That's kind of what I expect to happen. Well, obviously they could use MVS in a different role than we have seen him play with the Packers. Totally possible. I have never been super high on MVS just because of his boom bust, but he does have that upside. He has the ability to take a play to the house because of his speed. But it's going to be interesting to see how involved he is in this offense. And like you said, if it was Will Fuller, Like, I'm more worried about Juju and Mecole Hardman if they bring in Will Fuller. But MVS is like a budget Will Fuller who I am less worried about stealing all the
Yeah, he
targets
really
from
just
Juju
feels
and
like
Mecole.
great value Will Fuller, right?
Yeah, that's what he seems like. So and that's how I view, like, I know Chris Olave is supposed to be super smooth, but when I think of MVS, I think if he's just a speed threat. And everybody loves Olave. I'm not as in on Olave. I feel like he is like MVS, where it's that speed that is his only weapon. And yeah, he's got smoother routes than MVS. It's not really a fair comparison, but like that's how I feel about Chris Olave. I'm kind of afraid of him the same way I was with like Kadarius Toney or Rashad Bateman because of their landing spots. Like, I'm already kind of afraid of the role that Olave is going to get, but I'm not worried about him going to the Chiefs anymore because I don't think they're going to get him at 22 or whatever.
Yeah, it
Or
sounds like he should. I
he
think
should
it's
go
22 is the
before
first
20.
Packers.
Yeah, that's the first Packers pick.
And then the Chiefs, I think it's what? One's
29
22,
and
the other one's
30,
like 27, 28, 29, or 28,
something like
29,
that.
30. It's
Something like
the
that.
Packers, Chiefs, Chiefs, or Chiefs, Chiefs, Packers for those
Yeah.
last three down there.
So we
But
could.
yeah, I see maybe at 22 he could go to the Packers, and I don't know how you would feel if he does make it to the Packers at 22. Would you take him over like a Garrett Wilson to the Falcons with no good quarterback and it's Mariota?
I'd probably still take Garrett Wilson if he went at 8 and they don't have other weapons. I know it's not Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, but I'm that scared of Olave, and I trust what I think Garrett Wilson is going to be much more. So, like, if I had the opportunity in a draft to choose between the two at, say, like 106, 107 of a rookie draft, you've had Breece Hall and Malik Willis, maybe another quarterback if they go early, Treylon Burks, Drake London, those guys. Maybe you're in that middle of the first round area. Like, I'm not taking Olave there. I'm definitely taking Wilson there, though. Olave, I think, is going to be that end of the first round pick that I'm deciding, do I want Nakobe Dean, who went to the Eagles and looks like he's going to play every snap, or do I want Chris Olave? And I'm probably leaning Nakobe Dean. I'm leaning Kyle Hamilton. I think I'm taking those IDP top prospects over Chris Olave, but landing spot has a lot to do with it. So, we don't know for sure yet, but just off of my film grades and stuff like that, I'm afraid of Olave. But I don't know how much of that has to do with his competition at Ohio State because, they had probably one of the top wide receiver prospects in the next draft was their top receiver this year, and Garrett Wilson and Olave were behind him. So, who knows? Chris Olave could prove me wrong and be insane. Kadarius Toney had a couple weeks last year that he proved me wrong, and then he got hurt again. But
Dude, he had so many targets in that 1 week. He went off, and then he had about as many injuries as he had targets in that 1 week for the rest of his year. That dude is every little thing, his oblique, and then his like bicep, and then his pinky toe, and then his like kneecap, and it was like every possible aspect of his body. He probably had like a broken nose at one point. Who knows? That dude hurt everything he could possibly hurt. I'm like, what is going on with this man?
On top of that, they were going through Daniel Jones being hurt, and it sounds like Daniel Jones may get one more year because of the way they're talking about, him going through all these different coaches and stuff, but who knows? I'm still a little bit scared of Kadarius Toney just because they did bring Sterling Shepard back, and when he's healthy, he is just a target machine. So that's the one thing that scares me a little bit about Toney this year. If Sterling Shepard had left, Kadarius Toney would have been going up my boards a lot. But they still have Kenny Golladay. They still have Sterling Shepard. They still have guys like Darius Slayton, who's on the last year of his rookie deal, but that's whatever. But he's competing with Kadarius Toney for snaps at that third guy. So
I looked up Toney's history of what happened. So he missed time with COVID twice, hamstring injury, quad injury, shoulder injury, and thumb injury.
Yeah. So
what the heck? As long as that doesn't happen again, I am really excited for that one game I saw him explode. But
and he made those comments when they weren't using him to start the year, like, why are you gonna draft a Ferrari and keep it in the garage or something like that? Like, and people were like, this dude hasn't done shit yet. Like, how does he just say something like this? And then he came on the field like the next week, caught like 20 targets, it seemed like, and just balled out. So, hey, if if they go in with him, and it's, you got to remember, it's also new coach, new like people there. So we don't know what they're going to end up doing. We don't know if Kadarius Toney is going to take Sterling Shepard's job and be that target monster, which is possible. You know, we really don't know because we have so many questions. We don't know what Saquon Barkley is going to be this year. We just don't know. But if anything, I'm betting on positive like improvements to the passing game, where because this guy just came from working with Josh Allen. I think Daniel Jones, like we talk about great value player like MVS to Will Fuller. Like I think Daniel Jones, his rushing upside is always underrated. He's mobile. He's pretty good. He's just not a great deep passer. It seems like he can get some inaccurate balls, but like I feel like if he was invested in, he had the opportunity to take another step, and he never got invested in. So if they do invest in him and we see him play well this year, like he could still end up being the Giants franchise quarterback. It's just that possibility is a much smaller chance now. So we'll have to see what happens. But that was mainly, Tyreek, MVS. We kind of went into a bit of other things, but there's a couple defensive guys that have signed, and one that is, a big IDP player who is rumored somewhere, but not official yet. But it sounds like Bobby Wags may end up with the Rams, and I think that would be a little bit insane. It would suck for them to lose Von Miller, but bringing in Bobby Wagner, man, that would be such a slap in the face to Seattle in that division. I would love it. Like, that'd be great. And that linebacker role, that middle linebacker role he'd be stepping into, has had a lot of IDP production for the Rams as well. Like, we saw him be a tackle machine in Seattle. He would do the exact same thing in LA. So, Bobby Wagner, you're just looking at his age in Dynasty, and you're like, well, it is what it is. Like, I have Levante David, who's the same sort of thing. It's like, I can't sell the guy for anything, but I'm just going to keep getting those points and keep relying on him because nobody wants him, and because of his age, you're not going to get anything for him. So I'm just going to ride him into the sunset, But Bobby Wags to LA would be really cool. They haven't it would, and it really wouldn't be ruining any of our current IDP prospects, because
yeah, I mean, there goes
he'd be taking Ernest
Troy Reader ever again, but that guy was. They didn't he was putting up production.
Yeah.
Like you said, there was a lot of production in that position, but they clearly weren't a big fan of his.
And it didn't matter who was in the position. Like we saw Micah Kaiser, who was a guy that I was interested in, but we're going to talk about why he's no longer relevant anymore after this, because he did go to the Raiders, he did get signed, but they brought in somebody else. But like Micah Kaiser was productive in the role, Troy Reader. There was even, times where Kenny Young was there prior to being traded and going to Denver, and it didn't matter who was in the role, they were productive. So you get an elite guy like Bobby Wagner there, and they're just going to gobble up tackles. So very exciting if he does go there. Otherwise, we're just kind of on Bobby Wagner watch. Where is he going to end up? But the one we will talk about with the Raiders that kind of makes Micah Kaiser relevant. Micah Kaiser signed to the Raiders earlier this week after they they only had Denzel Perryman and Divine Diablo, who they're moving into that linebacker role from safety, and makes sense because they have good safeties. They drafted safeties. They got Jonathan Abram and who's the other guy, Moehrig. So
yeah, they have Trayvon Moehrig.
They've drafted good safeties, and then they drafted. Then they drafted Divine Diablo and moved him into that linebacker role for the end of last year. So they sent Kwiatkowski out the door. They sent Nicholas Morrow's gone. They everybody that was playing in that rotational role, KJ Wright, all those
Littleton,
guys.
They kicked out.
Yeah, Corey Littleton, he's in Carolina now. So there was opportunities for linebackers there. We were waiting for somebody to go next to Perriman. We were wondering it might be Divine Diablo. They signed Micah Kaiser. It might have been him. And then they go and they signed Jayon Brown from the Titans, who was one of the stories last year where they were trying to get an extension done prior to, going into this year. Didn't know if they were going to keep him. And eventually now he's leaving Tennessee. Tennessee went and traded for Zach Cunningham. So last year, or picked him up off of waivers, actually, claimed his contract. Zach Cunningham has a big contract. And so now it's they've got Monty Rice, that linebacker they drafted as depth, and they've got Zach Cunningham and I can't remember who, David Long. That's the other guy in Tennessee. So they didn't have a spot for Jayon Brown anymore. Didn't want to pay him. So he goes to the Raiders, and it looks like he's going to be the guy next to Denzel Perryman. So Jayon Brown, he's not a super valuable IDP asset. He's going to be the second linebacker there to Perryman, but it's a guy that you can probably start every week as an IDP flex. He's not like a linebacker 1 or 2. He's probably going to be in that linebacker 3 to 4 range, but he is a very good depth piece, especially if you can use him as like a substitute for injuries or bye weeks or to fill in that flex role. So good points, probably just a solid floor, not a ton of upside, but going to get you 10 to 14 points probably a week without serious issue, as long as, he does get that role next to Perryman, which is what we kind of expect. So what do you think of Jayon Brown? And do you know what do you think of Divine Diablo? Do you think they're gonna use him at linebacker? Or?
I feel like he might be more of a rotational guy more than a regular every down guy now. I'm not
like that nickel
positive
guy
on the situation. Yeah, something more like that, because he is the converted safety, so they want him out there to be able to play him in packages where they want more DBs instead of LBs. They don't need to sub him out because he has that safety ability,
Yeah.
but it really depends. I mean, Jayon Brown, I see, could even come in and be a pretty big piece, get like that consistent teens amount of points every week, but we'll see what happens. Was it Perriman was huge last year,
Yeah.
and I don't know if he's going to lose too much, but I definitely think if you have Jayon Brown, you're probably just feeling about the same, maybe a little better. I think you're feeling a little better actually, but
I
it's
mean, better than him being on the street. So
yeah, because I was looking at his scoring. Like when he's playing, he's been getting some solid points. Like he actually was it last year? He played until he was the one who bent his elbow in backwards. Was that it?
yeah,
Yeah, that was like looks like week 11. He only played 33
and
snaps,
that's when
but
David
he
Long
had
took over.
multiple weeks scoring 30 points. He had a 31 week 7, 30 week 9, and then had some 19, 16, 18. So if he gets a good role, he shows that he can put up the production. You just gotta understand: will he get that role, or is he not going to get a full set of
Yeah,
snaps? Is he only going to get like 2/3 or half of the game snaps? And when they
and
start losing snaps, they start losing points.
the one thing that worries me, like you said, is those snaps. And if they use Divine Diablo in that kind of nickel package, like linebacker who cover sort of role next to, it'll be Denzel Perryman. So if in those situations we see Jayon Brown getting rotated off the field, then we're going to have to adjust those expectations because he may only be playing half the snaps. But if he is that guy who is that second linebacker next to Denzel Perryman and they bring in Divine Diablo as that nickel guy, then we're looking at somebody who could be very productive if he's out there every down. Very, very productive.
Yeah, because there are some teams that support like two solid linebackers that are
Yeah.
every week. Like we've seen the Eagles do it, we've seen the Seahawks do it, but then you also have the teams that don't, like the Packers for one. I kept trying to get their second guy in Chris Barnes, but he just doesn't get enough snaps. It's Devondre Campbell, and all the rest are rotating. So
Yeah,
you
and
just got to see what's happening. Keep an eye on those snap counts as the first couple weeks start coming in.
Yep.
That was the biggest thing I noticed last year, was just getting an eye on who's getting what snaps, who's losing snaps, who's gaining snaps.
And on top of that, you got to look at their scheme, right? The reason Devondre Campbell is the one who's out there is because they have Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary as their outside linebackers, who they want out there to, be on a running back or to rush the passer. So when they've got those guys out there, they rotate out Chris Barnes as the linebacker when they go to nickel. So they're really like they've got two linebackers, but it's like they've got their down lineman, they've got the extra edge outside linebacker pass rusher, and then they keep that other outside linebacker out there and they take out Chris Barnes. So like Chris Barnes, he's a depth piece at best. Like if Devondre Campbell got injured, Chris Barnes could go through the roof, but like at this point, I don't even, I dropped him in my other league. I just, not worth holding on to right now just because of, like you said, those snaps in the scheme and how much he's on the field. So the first 3-4 weeks of every season, we're going to see defensive players that we had no idea were going to get opportunities, but they're getting every snap. And you're going to look at it the first 2 weeks and be like, I don't know if I should get this guy. They may be scoring 10, 12 points. And you're like, I don't know. And you're looking at another player who scored 16 points, but they did it on 30% of the snaps because they had a really, good week. I'm not going to bet on the guy who has 30% of snaps because he put up a good week. I'm going to go look at that guy who maybe we're looking at his floor of 12 points every week, but he's out there every snap, so he's going to get that 12 points every week. Whereas that guy who had a great week and played 30% of snaps, well, he got a sack, so he matters. But you don't want to rely on that every week because next week he's going to give you 0. So just those snap counts are so important. And especially linebackers, every year, there's going to be linebackers on your waiver wire that you can be like Alex Anzalone or one of these guys that nobody really cares about. He's nothing special.
TJ Edwards, I grabbed him last year. He was a nobody. He out of nowhere. I was actually against the opponent that had, I think, Alex Singleton, who randomly didn't do well. I looked into what happened. Saw TJ Edwards, got some snaps, put him on my team. He got a green dot on his helmet, played every snap for pretty much the rest of the year, got like 20-plus points in most weeks. And absolutely insane defensive help for me.
Yeah, and you talk about handcuffs for running backs, right? So I don't roster handcuffs for defensive players. I don't do that. But when you look at last year, Blake Martinez, he's wearing the green dot for the Giants. I think he tore his pec or something like that. He was out the whole, like, most of the season after like week 3 or 4, I think. And I spent 25% of my fab on Tay Crowder. He scored almost 20 points every week from there wearing the green dot in Blake Martinez's role. Now, you may not get that this year. He may be the second linebacker. He may be rotated out. We don't know. But if you see one of those, like if Denzel Perriman goes out and Jayon Brown is available, Jayon Brown's stock goes through the roof. If Devondre Campbell gets hurt, Chris Barnes goes through the roof. Like some of these guys who could step into that every down role, if you see a defensive injury, that's something to look at because lots of points are available for defensive players. So let's get into a couple of these mock drafts. I'm going to look at our offensive only one that we did first here. Let me get this up on the screen. So we did this one today, just a sleeper dynasty startup mock draft. There are no rookies in this. So it's only vets. So some of these guys, you may not see going in a certain round. There may be 20 rookies that push them down in other drafts, but this is only veteran players. So let's take a look at it. You drafted at the 5 spot and started with a running back. How did it feel starting with a running back in a super flex dynasty startup? Did you feel stressed after some of those quarterbacks started going off?
Well, my big thing was I wanted one of my top 3 being Josh Allen, Mahomes, or Herbert, and those were the first 3 because everyone else had them at their top 3. And then from then, I just felt like it was a bit of a reach to go for the 4th or 5th best quarterback at this point. Like according to the draft, I'd be taking the 5th quarterback off the board, but I think I might have had like a Kyler or Lamar, maybe a little higher than Burrow in my personal rankings. So I'd be getting my 4th, but I could either start with the 4th or 5th best quarterback, or I can start off my team with having the best running back in the league. So instead of having these other guys already having an upper hand on me on having a better player at their position, I now have the top running back. And that felt better. Plus, I knew that there's enough quarterbacks to go around that I could grab some. But you definitely don't want to wait too long. You can see some of the teams that completely ignored quarterback. They are going to be struggling. I feel like it's always better to have more quarterbacks than less. But you don't have to grab the quarterback in the first round if you really like one of the other 2 guys who were in the first, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Those are also perfectly fine guys for I want a cornerstone, very, very top level, insane, amazing at their position guys that are going to be a guy for a solid like 5 years. It's worth not going quarterback, but it is super flex and it can get sketchy ignoring them.
Yeah, and if you look at the 4th draft position, they took Joe Burrow. Didn't get another quarterback until they took Jordan Love in the 13th round. Like, that sucks. You don't want to be in that situation. You look at 111 where they did start with Jefferson, and they had the opportunity to take a quarterback, but then 2 went off the board at the end at the turn. So, if you get in that situation and all of a sudden you're looking at a lower tier in quarterback where, Matthew Stafford is great, Russell Wilson is great, but do you really want to take him that early ahead of Kyle Pitts, Najee, CeeDee Lamb, Javonte. Like I am totally cool with going towards those other skill positions at that point because yeah, you want Matthew Stafford on your team, which you ended up getting, but at that point, I think some of those skill positions are more valuable. I did go with a quarterback in the first round. I went with Lamar. I was choosing between Lamar and Deshaun. I was going to take Kyler if he made it to me, but he went the pick right beforehand. But Lamar and Deshaun, I don't really care which one I have. I think both of them are going to be great. I went with Lamar just because of his rushing ability. You know, Deshaun is a mobile quarterback too. He's going to get some rushing yards. He's going to throw for a ton of yards. But just the rushing upside of Lamar, I went there. And I was able to get CeeDee Lamb on the way back. I was looking at, all right, who do I want here?
Yeah, I knew when your pick was up and he was on the board. I knew it was immediately.
I was choosing between him and Javonte. And that was the choice. And I went with wide receiver just because of the longevity at wide receiver. And I think Javonte is going to be phenomenal. But I knew that there are players that are falling down boards or going later in the draft that I was comfortable with. Like I got Zeke after Travis Etienne. I have Zeke higher than Etienne in my rankings, but I knew that I could get Zeke on the way back. I waited because I knew I could get him on the way back. Even though I have him higher, you got to know your draft and you got to know where people are going. So you want to take the best player available. You want to get the guy that you think is the best. But if I think Zeke is the best and I can get him the next round, I'm not going to waste my pick in this round and throw away value that I could get there just because I have him ranked higher if I can get him later. So that's what I did. I took ETN first, where I have ETN like 18 or something in my rankings. I think he does have a ton of upside. I think he could very well be in the top 12 if we were talking about this next year. Could be very well in the top 8 if we're doing this next year. But you know, he was hurt. We didn't get to see anything. They got new offense. They paid $1 billion wide receivers. I don't know what to expect. I obviously think that I believe in Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to take a step forward. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a lame duck quarterback. I think he's going to figure it out. We're seeing him mature, and he had to deal with Urban Meyer. So he had to mature for Urban Meyer as well. So I think Etienne is a great pick right now. But I was able to get the Carr Adams stack as well. So can't complain. When you start with 2 quarterbacks and 2 wide receivers that are just studs, and if you look down my board after Zeke, I was able to get Marquise Hollywood Brown. So to go with Lamar Jackson. So I don't just have the Devontae Adams, Derek Carr stack. I also have Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown. So I was pretty happy. I did, however, take Matt Ryan a little earlier than I would have liked, but I was looking at a long turnaround, so I didn't want to risk another quarterback going in there. It looks like he would have made it back to me. He may have not have. Somebody could have taken Matt Ryan if they were high on Matt Ryan, but he may have made it back to me, but I just wanted to secure that third quarterback. Talk to me about your draft a little bit more. You went Kelsey in the fourth.
So yeah, we saw that I started off with the Taylor, and then I was coming back when I got to the Stafford. So originally, I actually went back and checked my rankings after I picked Stafford, because Stafford and Wilson, those two, I wanted both of them actually. I wanted grab one, have the other one come back to me.
Yeah.
2 picks away from having it happen. But I actually checked, and I have these guys so close that I picked Stafford over Wilson, but when I made my rankings yesterday, I put Wilson over Stafford in the rankings.
I have them right next to each other too.
Swapped them, but they were touching each other, so I didn't quite get that. That sucked. So then I went ahead and just grabbed Mixon. I figured I wanted another. He's 25. I wanted a young guy who's balling out and will score big. Because Derrick Henry with the pick right after, and right now in our dynasty, I have Derrick Henry. I know it's time to move him. He's 28, 29 years old, but he's win now and he's going to score big. But that age in a startup, it's hard to justify grabbing him over like a 25-year-old Mixon, so I couldn't do it. Coming back, I'm looking at like the Kittle pick. I realize Darren Waller went a lot later than when I grabbed Kittle. I might have been able to get away with grabbing like the J.K. Dobbins with the pick after, because as you see, I only went 2 running backs in the entire draft. I started running out of good running backs, and in Dynasty, you have so much time before the season starts. You don't need to force yourself to reach for those bad players. I didn't need to like reach for a hurt James Robinson where I'm trying to see which direction that goes. Oh, it looks like James Robinson went right before my Garoppolo pick, but I wasn't gonna reach for James Robinson. I was gonna sit there and grab the quarterback who might become a starter, and I can if he becomes a starter, you can flip him for something bigger. Or most of these
Yeah.
wide receivers that I'm grabbing, I need running backs. I only have two, but these wide receivers are more valuable, better, and are gonna score more than the running backs that are left. So
Yeah.
I can package two of these receivers and get a starting running back if I need that third running back. So the biggest thing is you can't reach because you're missing a position. Can't force it in there, especially in Dynasty where you have so much time. The season doesn't start for months. I can make trades, I can move my team around, I can make it work. You get the best players you can because the players' value you can then package, move around, and get even better players. I can end up with multiple second rounders or third rounders because I traded my seventh, eighth rounders and got some value out of it.
Yeah, and like you also got to know like when it's okay to reach and when it's not, because if your team is desperate and you only have two running backs, like some of these running backs that went prior to your Christian Kirk pick, like they could have been good players for you to grab, like Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds, but we also saw players like Alexander Madison or Ramondre Stevenson go before Kareem Hunt, before Chase Edmonds. It's like I'm not taking those guys before either of those players. And your choices when you got to your Christian Kirk pick, it's like Melvin Gordon, who's not on a team, and Devin Singletary and James Robinson. Is like I'm not taking any of those guys over Christian Kirk, who could be 100 targets for Jacksonville. So
Yeah, well, he's being
you got to
paid to
weigh
be
that.
one of the top receivers. I'm not going to grab a running back who might not even play. Like James Robinson, who knows when he's going to get healthy? And
Yep.
when he does, who knows how well ETN has taken that job over?
Yeah, I'm very worried about James Robinson just because he tore that Achilles so late, and Cam Akers is like the only person we've seen come back super fast from an Achilles who, and even then he didn't look real explosive when he came back, but he's got a whole off season to get that back now. We saw Deonta Foreman take like 2 whole years to come back from his Achilles and get that explosiveness back. So I'm scared of James Robinson. I don't think any injury. I don't call them a death sentence for these guys, but at running back, when you tear your Achilles and you lose some of that explosiveness, it can be a killer, especially if you're James Robinson, who was an undrafted running back. He doesn't have investment. He doesn't have a team who has invested a first round pick into him like they did ETN. So that's why I'm so high on ETN. But taking a look at this board, take a look at it while I talk about my next guy. But find somebody that you think was a reach. What do you think was a huge reach, and
Oh, I might be able to
maybe
find one for each round. There's some randos in
maybe a
here.
big value. So my first one I was going to talk about is Cam Akers. Okay, Cam Akers went at the 312 after Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. He was the next running back. So that makes him Jonathan Taylor 1 with Najee, Javante, DeAndre Swift, CMC. Antonio Gibson went after CMC. It's a little early, but if you believe, you believe. So
Yeah, so with Cam Akers as the RB9 here.
that is insanely high. We're talking ahead of Austin Eckler. Never. We're talking ahead of Alvin Kamara, J.K. Dobbins, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb. Like, I know we're looking at age and it's a startup, it's dynasty, but I'm never taking Cam Akers that high. I would have him more in the Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner range. Like, that's like in this draft where I'm taking him. I have James Conner and Ezekiel Elliott ranked above Cam Akers, but I would expect him to go in that range in these drafts, around the James Conner, the Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, in that range. So, and I have Aaron Jones much lower than he went in this draft. So,
Would you take David Montgomery or Cam Akers?
probably David Montgomery. But David Montgomery's on the last year of his rookie deal, so it adds a little bit of like, what are they going to do? It's very possible with them rebuilding that team that Khalil Herbert is the guy next year. That is possible. So
I could say keep it young, never pay running back. It's a waste of your money. A lot of teams are starting to go that way.
But David Montgomery will go somewhere, and I think he'll be valuable. Another running back who's very similar, Damian Harris. He's on the last year of his rookie deal. Like Damian Harris went. Where did he go in this? 8, 9. So right after you took Chase Claypool. Now that's one where if I was making that decision, I may have chose Damian Harris over Chase Claypool. But I understand taking Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool has a lot of upside. I'm interested in Chase Claypool. I'm just, when I look at your wide receivers, I'm a little scared.
Yeah, there's some guys that are a whole lot of, are they going to be something instead of them definitively being something. But that's what happens when I took 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a tight end, and only 1 wide receiver to start off. So,
yeah, but I mean, you still got guys that are young with a lot of upside.
I should have taken Brandon Cooks over Chase Claypool there. I was hoping Cooks went back to me for the next pick, and I was so upset that I lost him 2 picks before, and I got Allen Robinson instead. I don't even know how I feel about that Allen Robinson pick. It was more of I was so flustered from losing Cooks, honestly.
Yeah.
But, you want to know a fun fact about Cooks? Brandon Cooks and Tyreek Hill are currently the same age. They're both 28.
Yeah. And Brandon
Cooks still got some juice left in the tank. Who knows how much, but he's still got something left in the tank.
Yeah. Let's see. Juju went before Brandon Cooks and Gabriel Davis and Allen Robinson, Michael Gallup. Not taking Juju that high.
Ayuk and Bateman, I don't know if I'll take those guys above Cooks too, honestly.
Yeah, and you've got guys like Hunter Renfrow going in the 9th round. Like I'm taking other people. Ahead of Christian Kirk, ahead of Tyler Lockett, like LaVisca, whatever. But Robert Woods in the 11th round, like Russell Gage at the end of the 11th, even Corey Davis. Like I would probably choose to pick those guys over taking Hunter Renfrow earlier. I'm taking those guys later before I'm sacrificing an earlier pick for Hunter Renfrow in what I expect to be Devontae Adams' world. So, what's reach that you see there?
I think first round, Jalen Hurts is a reach. Not just because I tend to be a little bit more of a Jalen Hurts hater than most, but
even then, he shouldn't be ahead of
over Murray, Jackson, Watson. I mean, after that, I guess if you want to try and make some arguments against Prescott, I still wouldn't do that. I still wouldn't do that over Stafford or Wilson either.
Yeah.
But it's just Murray, Jackson, and Watson, all 3 of those guys going after. That was way too high for Jalen Hurts. I mean, I get it. It's super flex. You want that guy, but he just went Jalen Hurts and then grabbed Tom Brady forever after that, and then no other quarterback. So this dude's got Jalen Hurts and a guy for 1 year. I doubt Tom Brady.
You could have 2 1-year quarterbacks.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts could lose his job. He could ball out. It's really he's playing for his job every year now. Like if he's not making playoffs, he's possibly on the way out. That's how it feels like for his situation. But I don't like him that high. That's way too high for Jalen Hurts.
Same thing for Trey Lance. Same thing for Trey Lance at 2-1.
Yeah, Trey Lance is pretty dang high here. When you could have had Stafford or Wilson, yeah, they're 33, but quarterbacks are playing until they're 43. Who cares if they're 33?
Yeah, and Matt Ryan just got an extension. Russell Wilson just went to a new team, and he's going to be there for at least, you look at that 3-year window, and I don't have to worry about Matt Stafford or Russell Wilson for 3 years. I'm just cool with it. Yeah, we may after that have to worry about whether they're going to keep playing or they're going to retire, or maybe their production starts to fall off. Maybe they lose the ability to keep wide receivers there because they've paid everybody in Los Angeles. I don't know, but there are ways that those guys could stop being relevant. But I feel super comfortable for the next 3 years. Where Trey Lance, we haven't seen anything. Like I understand the hype and the prospect, but this is why I mentioned selling Trey Lance is because of how insanely valuable people see him as, and I don't see his value there, and I am more than willing to sell him to get anything great I can. Whatever package of players and picks that I could haul out of there for Trey Lance, I'll do it. I'm not super invested in it. But before we talk about this mock draft for 30 minutes, let's jump over to the other one where we've got some IDP players going in. Now this one wasn't done by us. This was from a friend of ours who is in our Dynasty League. So some people that we play with are in here. But we're just going to kind of go over where some IDP players are going and who's going, kind of what the priority is on these guys. So we can see the first defensive player taken off the board is TJ Watt, and he's taken in the 6th round. I get it. I get taking TJ Watt as the first defensive player. I'm probably not doing it though. I am probably look, Harold Landry went in the 14th round. We've got some of these, Chase Young, Aaron Donald, Max Crosby. We've got some of these guys going in here after that round, but I am probably going to take a top linebacker or a top safety as my first defensive player, just because of the way the defensive line position is. But you think about it like at the tight end, like if you're taking a elite tight end, it can be a difference maker for your team. TJ Watt can be that for your defensive line as well. And it says linebacker here, but on Sleeper, he's a pass rusher. It's a 3-4.
Yeah,
he's that
D-line
outside
LB,
linebacker.
and you never put D lineman in your LB slot, but you always can try and throw those sneaky LB D lines in your
Yep.
D line slot. So he's one of those. If they're / D line, you're always playing him in D line. You're not really playing him in the LB slot.
Yeah, and like we see Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett, they're the next 2 defensive picks. Again, you're talking stud defensive linemen. Where I see a problem though is Aaron Donald going 7-5 in front of Chase Young, Max Crosby. Aaron Donald might retire. Like, I know they're working on an extension, trying to give him some money, but like Aaron Donald could play 1 more year. He could play 2 more years. Like, I'm not betting on Aaron Donald right now. I'm not taking him this early. He's obviously elite. He's an incredible talent, but I'm not taking him in the 7th round. I'm taking Roquan Smith. I'm taking Micah Parsons. I'm taking Darius Leonard. Those are the guys I'm looking to take in this area. And that's just because the focus of your IDP, the stars of your IDP are your linebackers.
Yeah, it's the name value that a lot of people, when they're doing these startup drafts, they haven't played too much IDP, or they're fairly new to it, so they see these big names, these big name edge rushers, the flashiest players.
And these guys
Not
get
the
money
super
too.
high
These are
tackling
very
inside
high
linebackers.
paid.
It's the flashy edge rushers that they see, and they think those are the spiciest guys they want. Like for our startup, I go back and look at our startup all the time, and it's wild how much we didn't know when we did our startup years ago versus what we know now. But like some of these guys that are just going super low, like look how far Jordan Brooks went there. He goes, what round is that? 9-5 after plenty of random, like,
after
I would
Hunter
never
Renfrow.
take Chase Young over 2 rounds before Jordan Brooks. I would
Hunter
never do
Renfrow
that.
went before Jordan Brooks.
Yeah, you're grabbing. That's the craziest thing too, is people are so hyper focused on offense in the beginning of these drafts. And it's kind of hard not to join them, because if you do start ignoring your offense and going for the defense early, knowing I
You
can get
miss
these top
out.
defensive players, suddenly your offense is trash.
Yeah.
You've lost everybody in your offense. But like some of these offensive players, you're getting depth guys before you're getting your starting defense. Don't worry about your starting lineup, and then start worrying about your depth. Unless it's an insane value, but everyone's picking through offense so crazy, your value's never on offense at this point. It's always on defense when you start getting in these middle rounds.
And that's why, when we talk about how important IDP needs to be to your league to make it valuable, like you need these guys, you need enough starting defensive players in your starting lineup to make it matter. You're not starting just 2 linebackers. Like, you're starting a whole defensive lineup just like you would your offensive lineup. You've got 2 defensive linemen, you've got 2 linebackers, you got 2 DBs, and 2 or 3 flex options, So when you're doing this, you have to remember, like, you're talking about possible 20-point week every week linebackers, where you could get a wide receiver like, I don't know, say we're talking about Michael Pittman here in the 8th round. If you're taking Michael Pittman there, instead of taking somebody like Jordan Brooks or even Fred Warner or Cole Holcomb, Aluakun, like all these guys are top defensive like players. Like Aluakun was the like number 1 linebacker last year. He just got paid in Jacksonville. He's got 2 years there of guaranteed money. After that, he could be let go, but like you've got 2 years for sure. And that's, we talked a little bit earlier about how check the snap counts of those guys when the season starts. There's always going to be a player that's out there that we didn't expect to be getting all these snaps and ends up being fantasy relevant. But the other thing you have to remember, and part of this is why these defensive players fall down in these drafts, is that linebackers are one of the most easily replaced positions in football. You don't, like, there are those top guys who are getting paid, but if you go right now on SpoTrack or on Over the Cap and you go look at guaranteed money and you sort by linebackers, by the time you get out of the top like 15, you're looking at guaranteed rookie contracts. That's it. So these guys aren't super invested in, but like Nick Bolton went in the 14th round here. I'm taking Nick Bolton right next to Patrick Queen. Like I'm taking him all the way up there. Some of these guys are rookies that Nick Bolton was a rookie last year who balled out, and Anthony Hitchens is gone. It's going to be him and Willie Gay, it looks like. And he's on a rookie deal. He's not getting a ton of money. He's not a super flashy name, but he is going to be one of the most productive fantasy linebackers this year. So those positions turn over. It goes to people that you've never heard of. It goes to somebody who may not be the most incredible defensive player, which we can use the Eagles as an example, right? Alex Singleton, the season before that, it was Nathan Jerry. Like, these are guys who are now backups or practice squad, special teamers. Like, these guys finished their rookie contract where they were playing and they don't get paid. They go and take a depth role behind somebody who is either a stud elite guy, a Roquan Smith, like these guys who are going to get big contracts, Darius Leonard, Devin White, like Bobby Wagner, these guys who are getting money. They're going to go play behind somebody because they used to be a fantasy stud, but they actually suck at the position at times. Like,
yeah, Alex Singleton is over at the Broncos now getting paid only like $1 million. Will he ever be relevant again? The dude was putting up massive points in the first half of the year. It was teetered off when T.J. Edwards took over, and then he came back and he was scoring big points. Last year, he was scoring big points in the second half of the year when he showed up for the first time. But that's what, like 1 year of relevancy to just be a flash in the pan and then gone.
Yeah. So like so we're looking at a startup draft right now, but if you were looking at a rookie draft, like I've talked a lot about, like if the Eagles take a linebacker in the middle of the first round, like he's like the 110 to 112, like in there, you're looking at that. You're looking at him. You're looking at Kyle Hamilton. Like these are guys that you want to take in that area of the draft because they're going to be immediate impact players, where some of the offensive players, after you get out of that top 6, 7, they're not immediate impact players anymore. They're not immediately making your fantasy team better. And there is going to be probably, I don't know, 5, 6 linebackers that go in the first 2, 3 rounds, maybe 8 linebackers in the first 3 rounds, but probably 5 in the first 2. So these are immediate impact players. They're not paying linebackers. It's turning into the running back position, where we get a guy, we use him until his contract's up, and then we draft another guy and replace him. That's just what we're looking at. You're not going to see them getting paid unless they are stars. But those stars need to be going higher in these startup drafts. So let's see who else we got here real low that we may want to talk about. Some of these DBs. Derwin James going in the 8th round. If
he has been insane. He is the number 1 defensive back coming into the year, I think.
Yep.
Like Kenny Moore took the title last year for scoring, but I think it's in your like if you're doing power rankings, I think Derwin James is number 1 defensive back right now.
Yep. And then the next one was Jeremy Chin, which I'm cool with too. Trayvon Diggs though went right after Jamal Adams.
Yeah, it looks like
And
Budda Baker, Jamal Adams, then Trayvon Diggs.
that is just way too high for a corner. You
Yeah,
can't
he was
you
a
can't
good
bet on
scorer,
those
but only
interceptions.
because those interceptions. How is that? That's unsustainable for a guy to be on a record-breaking pace every year.
Yeah.
Dudes aren't breaking records. The same dude isn't breaking records year after year. He had one flashy, crazy year, but there's no reason to reach over Minka, who goes multiple. What was that 3 rounds after Minka Fitzpatrick goes? Minka
Yeah.
was the number 4 DB last year. Trayvon Diggs was like 13th or 14th.
Same
How
with
is
Jesse
Minka that much
Bates.
later? Yeah, Jesse Bates.
Jesse Bates, Xavier McKinney, like Jonathan Abram in the 17th. Like I'm taking any of these guys over Trayvon Diggs. Just like because of, like you said, we're not betting on him to repeatedly push for interception records, you know? Like we're not betting on that. And to take Trayvon Diggs over who that person in that last pick took Isaiah Simmons the next pick, and then Logan Wilson went after that, and then Patrick Queen. In no world am I taking Trayvon Diggs in front of any of those players. Even Devondre Campbell in the 12th, Harold Landry in the 14th.
Well, Devondre Campbell should be higher than the 12th.
Yes.
I guess he's 28. People are knocking his
Doesn't
age.
matter.
But
He just got a
5-year
long-term
He's
deal.
going to play for at least 3 to 4 of those.
Yep.
Like, give him. I'd say 3. Give him at least 3 guaranteed here. That I believe. I'm willing to say he's got 3 as a relevant starter. I would take that.
Yep.
3 is a relevant high teens, low 20s every week starter.
Is there like a top tier defensive player that you don't see on here that you're like, man, how is this guy not drafted? You know, it's hard to pull it out of thin air because they're not on this board.
Think of a guy, then look around, see if he's there, then think of another guy.
Yeah.
I like to see the respect Jordan Brooks is getting. He went from a nobody to pretty amazing. But I mean, after the year last year, no one should forget about who he is.
Yeah, let me pull up my defensive rankings.
CJ
real
Mosley
quick.
even on this list?
He is. He's down near the bottom.
I mean, he's 28 too, but his contract's running out a lot sooner. Oh yeah, he's in like the second to last round. I finally found him. He's getting picked right after Calvin Ridley. But hey, I mean, I'm fine with stashing Ridley for a year. With CJ Mosley in our startup draft, that was the year he opted out for COVID. We added extra COVID spots. I picked him up, stashed him for a year. Next year, I win a championship with him balling out as one of my top linebackers.
All right. I have a name. Let me pull this list back up here. I have a name that I want to talk about that is not on here. And pull up my IDP rankings here. You'll see, where is it? Kevin Byard. Okay.
Oh, I didn't even notice he wasn't on there. That guy
He is not drafted at all.
He was DB1 the past 2. He was for sure last year. Was he the year before as well? That guy is
a stud.
How
not
is
even
he not
on
on
here.
there?
But we've got.
I would take him over Trayvon Diggs. Why would
every
you take
time.
Trayvon Diggs up there?
Every time.
Byard?
Why would you take Trayvon Diggs when you've got Isaiah Simmons on the next pick? You know, it's. So,
I mean, some of these people you see probably didn't know what they were doing. Like, you see Patrick Surtain going near the end of this, and no.
I know
no
we
Byard,
say
and
no
Surtain
corners,
being taken.
But Patrick Surtain did put up some decent fantasy points last year. But I'm still, like we talked about, philosophy. We're not investing in Patrick Surtain.
Sometimes there's the spicy nickel. Kenny Moore, I thought Kenny Moore was a safety last year. Apparently he was a nickel corner the whole time. He did it. Logan Ryan, before he converted to safety, he was an insanely high-scoring nickel corner. But most of the time they're in the nickel position, or they're getting bullied, and they could be benched any minute. So it's the good safeties score well. Very rarely the good nickel corners will score well, but most of the time the good corners don't score well.
Yeah, and there's some other guys here that I want to mention with some young linebackers that you may not even know who they are if you don't follow IDP fantasy, if you didn't draft rookies in IDP last year, like Zaven Collins down in the 15th round, JOK in the 14th round, Nick Bolton in the 14th round. Some of these guys are
Jevon
young.
Holland went in the 15th round. I like him.
Yep. These are young players that are probably coming into starting roles this year. Like Zaven Collins should be taking over the Jordan Hicks role next to Isaiah Simmons. JOK should be next to Anthony Walker out there every down. So these are guys that should be very good. They are also on rookie deals, and you can pretty much guarantee that, barring them pulling a Jalen Smith or getting injured, you can kind of assume they're going to be a starter for the next 3 years. These are high draft pick investments that these teams have made, early second round picks, first round picks, and these linebackers that they're going to get time. A lot of times you just got to wait a year. I drafted Zaven Collins last year, really excited for him. They were talking about moving on from Jordan Hicks, and they didn't end up doing it. So he ended up being that third guy who he kind of worked his way into the defense a little bit as that third guy, but he wasn't fantasy relevant last year. I didn't have him on my taxi squad, and I couldn't play him, and it was rough. I expected him to play more last year, but that's just like we talk about. These linebackers are fickle, and it can change with the drop of a hat, and you got to keep an eye on those snap counts. So let's wrap it up here so we don't go too long, but if you just look at this real quick, I'll look at it too. Pick your favorite team so far in here. We weren't a part of this draft. Let's just take a couple minutes, and before we get out of here, pick our favorite team in this list and say why. So I'll give you a second to look over it while I do as well.
Okay. I think I might have already found mine here, but I'm still perusing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I might have a good choice here.
Yeah, I have mine as well. Who is it?
I'm gonna go with team number 3.
Hey,
actually.
Me too.
Oh, we're both thinking the same thing. So they went a little old with their quarterbacks, but Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady normally just want one of those old guys.
But they also have Mahomes, so
they also have Mahomes. This is in it to win it. Tyreek Hill, Darnell Mooney, Brandon Cooks. I love Mooney and Cooks down there as just solid value grabs. They picked
I also love
Roquan
Michael
Smith.
Gallup.
Is a solid linebacker. They grabbed one of the, if not the best tight end in Mark Andrews. Yeah, Gallup as their wide receiver 4 is really solid. They have Owusu Koromoa and Jevin Holland, who are the 2 rookies last year that are pretty solid grabs.
And Rayshon
Jarvis Landry,
Gary
who knows where he goes, and Rayshon Gary
D-line
is
eligible.
defense.
So
yeah, he's a D-line. He's not an actual linebacker. It says linebacker there, but you play him in D-line.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that one's a pretty spicy team there. I'm trying to see if there's another one.
I did really like that one. The other one I really liked was the Joe Burrow team. They don't have a lot of defense on that team yet, but the Aaron Donald pick is the one I don't like. If you could swap that Aaron Donald pick, like even just with Chase Young right next to it, like I like this team a lot more. If you could take, instead of taking Rashad Bateman there, if you could take like a Devondre Campbell who went after that, or a Blake Martinez. I love the Minka pick later, but instead of Bateman, I would love to have a solid linebacker there to go next to Jordan Brooks. Even if you did it at the Cortland Sutton pick and took a Cole Holcomb or a Deion Jones, which you don't have to do. It's coming back around to you. You could have waited because there was guys like Devondre Campbell and other players out there still. But I like that.
Also, it looks like some of these picks might have been traded around too.
There was a lot of traded picks in here.
There's a lot of craziness going on now.
I don't have the trades to look at and see them, so I'm just judging it
like you are, just straight up down if that's the team they drafted.
Yeah, and like you said, there may be much different roster construction going on here because of how many trades are in this startup draft, but that's what you get. So if you're in a startup draft and you can move around, like startup draft is where you get the most value out of your picks. Rookie picks are never going to fill your team like you have the opportunity to at the startup draft. So you can really set yourself up to be screwed by not preparing yourself for the future in your startup draft. Like if you look at Team 11, they started with Najee Harris and Dalvin Cook. Then they went 3 wide receivers and then Tua.
That's their only quarterback. Is this a one? This isn't a 1 QB league, they are going to.
This is super flex. It is.
Yeah, so
This was also a
I like
tight
their
end premium
defense too,
draft.
but that is thin.
Yeah, the defense
Micah
on that
Parsons,
team is
Devin
very
White,
good.
Jamal Adams. That's not bad at all.
Brian Burns, like that's a good defensive lineman. And then
And they got
Bobby Wagner
Gesicki super
late.
late, Bobby Wags. Yeah, he's got a lot of solid, but that one just Tua, he's going to be. I mean, obviously, I guess they're gonna have a rookie draft. He's gonna be hoping to get the because if you don't have a second quarterback, it's so hard to stay relevant in a super flex league because those quarterbacks are consistently scoring
Yeah,
so much higher than all the other positions. No matter how stacked your team is, you're losing 5, 10 points guaranteed on that. Not guaranteed, but close to it on that super flex position being a non-quarterback.
and I'm gonna take these 2 picks out of it, but go through this and tell me what the worst pick is besides Aaron Donald, because we've talked about that one. The other one I'll mention is Emmanuel Ogbah before Minka, Eric Kendricks, Kyle Duggar. Like, I'm not doing that. That's never
I like
happening.
Chase Young, but that is insanely way too high.
Yeah, I agree.
Baker Mayfield is way too high. I hate to say it,
This
but
was
this had to have been
also
before Baker and Deshaun
yeah.
happened,
You see,
right?
Deshaun shows
Oh yeah, it says
Houston.
QB dash Houston. Okay, with that in
Yeah,
mind, I'm okay. I'm not gonna I'm
and
not gonna hate on
Tyreek Hill
Baker here.
still says Kansas City. So it is what it is. But this was post Carson Wentz trade because you can see he's
I
listed
think
as
Hurts is in a
Washington.
much more reasonable spot this time around.
Let's see,
I
where did
thought
he
he was
go?
at third round now instead
Yeah,
of being in the first round.
uh,
That's a
th-
lot better.
that's about where I have him. I
Just
have him.
after Stafford and Lawrence, so I'm okay with that. Russell
Yeah,
Wilson, or is that I'm looking at the wrong way? Oh, I'm looking at the opposite way. It's just
yep.
after Wilson and Fields.
I would
Maybe I would
have
have taken
Stafford
Stafford
before
over
him, but
Hurts,
yeah,
but I would
but
also have Fields after Hurts and Jones after Hurts because I just don't know about those two yet.
agreed. I'm with you there.
But they're close. I don't know. I guess if you really want the younger, I can accept taking Jones or Fields over Hurts. I can't accept taking Hurts over Stafford though. That I don't agree with. You have to take
Yep.
Stafford.
Yeah. And the last team I'll talk about that I do really like here is the Justin Herbert team, the number 2. They went with Buda Baker and Myles Garrett, who I'm cool with Myles Garrett being really early. It's probably earlier than I would have taken him, but like we said, he is a stud at the position, like top tier player at your defensive line. But then Buda Baker, Eric Kendricks, Zaven Collins, all of those
Looks like they were
guys.
definitely valuing that D line over LB, but they still grabbed solid D line picks, and the linebackers that they grabbed later
We're
were
good.
great value.
Yep.
I mean, Zaven Collins, we'll see. I hope that he pans out to be something.
Me
Just
too.
as I'm hoping for Jamin Davis was my first round grab. That I thought he was going to be the number 1 linebacker last year of the rookies. I was so wrong about him.
Yeah.
But you got some guys that you're hoping are panning out. But I think if that works out, yeah, that's a pretty solid team. I don't know about Melvin Gordon, but I mean, who's left at that point?
Yeah,
The running
it's
back
true.
situation.
It's true. But
I guess I would have gone more defense if I was him in that late that point, but still, it's fine. It's
yeah,
end of the round.
but
End of the
hopefully
draft.
this gives you a little bit more information if you want to start playing IDP. You kind of get a better understanding of where some of these players go and how to value them and how to understand the value of those positions, like your linebackers being those studs on defense. And there are a bunch of strong safeties, free safeties out there that can be very valuable as well. So like Derwin James, I'm cool taking him like I would take a top linebacker. Jeremy Chin, Buda Baker's fallen down a little bit, but he's still super valuable. Minka, some of these guys, they're just as valuable as a top linebacker, but those linebackers are your cornerstone of your defense. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more idea on where you're taking them in a startup draft. If you guys have any questions, make sure you leave a comment on the video, shoot me a message on Twitter, let us know. If you want to, ask some more direct questions, get onto Patreon, get into Discord, ask us some of those specific trade questions. How do you value a defensive player in a trade? Things like that. If you're struggling with those, ask us some questions. We'll talk them through with you. Talk them through on the podcast, even if you guys send us in some trade information. More than happy to. If you guys have questions, let us know. Otherwise, make sure you check out Patreon. If you go to my Twitter at Heart Sports Talk, there is a giveaway posted on there for subscribing to the podcast, following on Twitter, checking out the Patreon. There's different ways to enter. It's for a $20 NFL Shop gift card, and we'll do it. It's got an end date on there in April. Just check it out. See if you can get some free NFL swag. Maybe put it towards a jersey this year. Do whatever you want. But me and Austin usually end up having a few bets of $25 or something on some games, and it all started with Baker Mayfield. So, but if you want to win $20 gift card NFL shop, make sure you enter on Twitter. Otherwise, thanks for watching the podcast. Leave a like on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Let us know some trades. Let's start going over some trades and how you value these IDP players. If you got some, send them our way so we can talk about them. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a good one. We'll be back on Monday with we'll figure out what we're going to do next week, but we're getting closer and closer to the draft. We're a month away, so it's going to be a lot of draft talk once that happens. Austin has a great idea for us to do a rookie draft off of. We're going to take maybe Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft or Mel Kiper's mock draft or one of these
maybe
mock drafts.
Like a 3-rounder so we can get some of those later linebackers involved.
Yeah, so we can do maybe we'll do a 3-round
we
rookie
need to see
draft.
Where those running backs and linebackers go. So we got at least 3 rounds in a mock draft. We'll find.
And so we'll do a rookie draft as if that mock draft was the NFL draft, and that's how we'll look at those players. And we'll talk about maybe where they ended up in that mock draft, how it affects their fantasy value, so we can be prepared when the draft comes. So we'll do that next week sometime. But we want to start doing some more mock drafts, startup drafts, rookie drafts, so that we can just cover all our bases and get all the information we can. Otherwise, have a good one, guys. Thanks for watching the podcast. We're out of here.